Welcome to the Subjective Professor podcast, where we reject coercion and hypocrisy. It's Monday, March 24th, 2025, episode 343, and we're going to talk about an anti-Trump meme that I saw. Perhaps it's a slow news Monday, but here we go. This is what the meme said. Tyrants view educated citizens as their greatest enemy. Slaveholders stopped the enslaved from learning to read. Nazis burned books. Dictators censor media. That's why Trump is attacking education, science, museums, and the arts. Ignorance is the handmaiden of tyranny. So, a tyrant is an absolute ruler unrestrained by law or constitution, a ruler who exercises absolute power oppressively or brutally. And, there may be some examples of brutality, maybe oppression, perhaps. But is Trump a tyrant? I don't think that he is any more of a tyrant than Biden was. In fact, I think Biden was much, much worse. And many presidents were pretty bad, depending on how you want to look at it and what your perspective is. But if you were one of the people that was killed by a bomb ordered by one of these presidents, then you're going to see pretty much all of them, the recent ones anyway, as some kind of tyrant. But on the other hand, Trump is trying to return power and freedom to states and to individuals in his way. What we have right now in this country is extremely wasteful and ineffective. Organizations like USAID literally fund corruption. Is this all just simply an exercise in hypocrisy? Well, probably. Now, Trump has his problems too. The bombing of the Houthis and not really ending the wars that he had promised that he was going to end. And one has to wonder, is there a reason? He was very set on doing this, but once he was in office, you know, there was a change in course. Now, there was a conversation. I don't know how it was able to be leaked, but there was a conversation where J.D. Vance pushed back against Trump with regard to the bombing of the Houthis, saying that, this is not right. And the argument was more that it was inconsistent with the message and the promises that Trump had made. So even there is publicly, he'll go along with it, but privately, when discussing policy like this, he voiced his disapproval and his disagreement. Prosecuting the war in Ukraine has to be a greater crime by Biden. At least Trump is trying to wind it down by reestablishing diplomatic talks with Russia. And then, of course, I mentioned recently the deporting of potentially innocent people, the whole lack of due process. And I mean, it's rushed, all this deporting to El Salvador. So people aren't even being returned to the country where they came from, but rather they're all being shipped off to this prison colony in El Salvador. So yes, I mean, Trump is responsible for a lot of problems as a result of this mass deportation, but Biden shouldn't have let all those people in the first place. The next line of the meme implies that Trump is somehow a slave, uh, someone who holds slaves, or someone who treats us like slaves by preventing us from learning how to read. Right? So slaveholders stopped the enslaved from learning to read. But it's the Department of Education and the whole public school system that is more guilty of that than anything else. I mean, to say that Trump is going to try to hold education, public school education, accountable is not stopping the attempt to teach people how to read. In fact, he's doing nothing of the sort. He's returning education, the control of education, back to the states. He's getting rid of the federal level of regulation and control. So how is this preventing people from learning how to read. If anything, it's more the opposite. I saw a meme where I believe it was a school district in the Chicago area, I believe, where not a single student could read at the level, at their grade level. And that is just horribly pathetic. I mean, right? So who actually is preventing people from learning how to read? The next line is, Nazis burned books. So did anyone in the Trump administration burn books? And the answer is no. I did a quick Google search, like, what are they talking about? And apparently there's a rumor going around that Trump supporters burned a bunch of books. It's a hoax. It was labeled as a hoax. And burning things is more something that, the radical left would be more prone to do. They burn businesses down, they riot, they loot, and they burn a lot of cars, particularly Tesla cars and dealerships. So it's more characteristic of something that, um, radical leftists would do, and football fans, right? And then it goes, dictators censor media. This is just kind of funny because it was Trump who was censored. He was kicked off of Twitter. He was silenced. He wasn't allowed to voice his opinion. So it's very interesting where he's the one who was censored. And I believe he's in certain ways, he's not trying to shut down, uh, you know, the socializing sites like X or Facebook. He's not shutting them down. He's not imposing certain kinds of censorship. However, he is censoring anti-Israel stuff, calling it anti-Semitic. There was that law that was passed that if you say anything against Israel, then you're somehow anti-Semitic. And I wonder, and I maybe even hope that it's because he has to play along. Um, or is it that too many people in the Trump administration cannot see through the smokescreen of Israel? And what is the logical conclusion of all of this violence? Um, right. Uh, so is this in any way comparable to the censorship that took place during the Surveillance? All the lockdowns and people getting censored left and right. One has to wonder. Um, if that, and I feel like I'm missing something, that there was something with regard to censorship on the Trump side of things. But it's escaping me right now. And so then the meme concludes, that's why Trump is attacking Education, Science Museum, and the Arts. Well, the Department of Education is a failure. Forcing policies that no one wants in the first place, imposing requirements and behavior standards which utterly ruin education. So it's an utter failure. Getting rid of it is not a bad thing. It's a great thing. Science controlled by the state is a failure. I mean, we saw this with the whole cerveza phenomena. Yeah, everything that was said to be a conspiracy theory has now been proven correct, and it's getting more horrifying as we move ahead. Museums probably should be privately funded anyway, um, especially when you consider art that has to be put in these museums, that is funded as well. Right. So museums and art. I've always said that artists should get money by people who want to see the art that they do. When you politicize the funding for art, you get really weird things like Piss Jesus, a statue of Jesus in uh, a jar full of human urine. That's who would want to see that, and who thinks that that's even art? So I think that museums and art in general should be privately funded. That way, people who would actually go and see this kind of art would have to pay for it themselves. In other words, let the market decide which art is actually desirable. And anyway, all art suffers in an economic decline, even if your name isn't uh, Hunter Biden, right? All art is suffers in an economic decline. People can't afford to buy art, to go see art, and so therefore the government can't afford to do this either. And so cutting these programs, again, it's nibbling around the edges of the huge deficit and debt that the country has, but you know, why not? And then it says, ignorance is the handmaiden of tyranny. It's funny because the entire post is indicative of ignorance. And so, as previous episodes that I've had with regard to projection, a lot of the radical left, they like to project onto others exactly what they are doing. And so their behavior, rather is extremely ignorant, certainly much more than what Trump is doing. So comparatively speaking, the opponents of Trump are far more ignorant than Trump himself. Now, over the last, usually when I have a meal or something, I watch something just to, because that's the only time I have to watch movies or TV shows these days. And so Serenity popped up on YouTube. You can watch it free without with ads, right? It's a 2005 movie, not that love movie, but this is a 2005 movie with Nathan Fillion, directed by Joss Whedon. It's the conclusion, the movie conclusion of the TV series Firefly, which I think it only ran for one season. Uh, and so all of the questions that were raised in the actual show, it's basically a space western, in case you were wondering. If you haven't seen it and you're really a fan of it, I would highly recommend watching the TV show first and then watching the movie. It makes a lot more sense, right? But in the movie, they uncover a dark government secret, and they're able to, and they manage to send it all over the universe, right? So they send the evidence, the video, all over the universe. So everyone can now see what the government has been up to, and to little or no effect, right? So the video goes out, and it seems that people are just scratching their head. Like, is it real? Is it not real? Should I care? Should I not care? I mean, it's huge news, and exposes just how bad people in positions of power are, and the effect is, eh, you know, no one really seems to care. And I feel like that's the effect of Trump exposing government corruption. I mean, those of us who always knew there was corruption are just surprised at just how bad it was. Although I have implied that I felt like all of this is only possible because of inflation, right? Because of all the money printing, they're able to bribe entire countries. And in fact, what has been happening. Uh, and so you have all of this evidence coming out. And still the radical left don't seem to be affected by it at all. They're not embarrassed. They're not ashamed. They don't even, question what are the effects or the ripple effects of so much corruption. So what would it take to awaken the radical left or even the never Trumpers? Cautioning, of course, that the people who are fanatically pro-Trump, they also walk a very dangerous line. And I've already mentioned a couple of reasons why they should be cautious. And these same people, the radical left, they did not notice any of the overreach of Biden. Uh, Instead, they were willing to go along with everything, particularly the weaponization of law against Trump. And it makes you wonder how easy it is to manipulate people, with just simple bad definitions and narrow subjectivities. And there's plenty to go around. And it seems that only a small number of people are even willing to admit that there is something shady, unsavory, unacceptable about the things that are going on in government. So hypocrisy really truly is a monster. It's a beast that must be uh, outed and also slain. Now, I've said before that Trump is a populist. He doesn't seem to have any guiding principle, at least one that he makes public. He doesn't have a guiding principle, which makes him extremely vulnerable. But even if he was consistent, I don't think he would be able to persuade a single person on the radical left. Just as he said in his address to the joint session of Congress, he could find a cure for cancer and still none of them would applaud him. And that's the case, right? It's just they are fundamentally against him. It's beyond reason. And I think that is simply the problem. And even more, this is uh, a stronger argument, or at its core, an argument for individual freedom. So even if people choose to participate in this kind of absurdity, this kind of ridiculousness, we don't have to. We can opt out. We can say, nah, I'm not really interested in any of this stuff. But instead, we are forced to participate. As a country, we are forced to use the currency of the government. We are forced to participate in all this ridiculous foreign adventurism. We're forced to participate in all of this, twisted activism for public safety. You know, it's unfortunate, but that's the world that we live in. I was just kind of so mystified by that meme. I just had to say a few things about it, and in the process, talk about the movie Serenity, which I just got done watching, which I think is a great movie, and also to talk about the J.D. Vance conversation where he pushed back against the bombing of the Houthis. But that's it for this episode, and I'll talk to you next time.